avatars takes place every time there is atyachar in the world. And that's why in the Bhagavad Gita he says na yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. So that srijamyaham happens every time there is an increase in atyachar.
That's the one reason where sometimes people debate on this, that whether Ram should be called as Lord or he is a normal human being.
So he was a divine avatar in the form of a normal human being. So he was both.
Yes.
He had to be a normal human being. If he wasn't a normal human being, he could not have killed Ravan.
Ravan जो character है, मतलब he is so interesting. मतलब I was reading books that Ravan actually was in his previous birth, he was not a asur. उसके बारे में थोड़ा light throw कर सके. And why that? Because he was a good person at that time. वो द्वारपाल था ना.
Jai Vijay. Actually, this was the second birth. Of Jai Vijay.
Yes.
When Sri Ram took this avatar, he took it to kill Ravan. And if we remember, Ravan had a vardhan. And what was that vardhan? Ki nobody can kill him. He cannot be killed by a deva. He cannot be killed by an asura. He cannot be killed by a rakshasa. Cannot be killed by a kinnara. Not a pashu. Not a pakshi. Not a naga. And in Ahankar, he said, ki don't worry about human beings. वो मनुष्य तो बिल्कुल weak है. I will deal with them in no time. So you can leave them out of the list. और वो loophole बन गया. So when Sri Ram took birth, in this avatar, he did not know his divyata.
सब लोग ये समझते हैं कि दशरथ had 3 queens, कौशल्या, सुमित्रा and केकई.
But get 350.
Yeah, 350. मतलब it's in your book, although I have read it before, क्योंकि मैं अपने YouTube के लिए बहुत research करता रहता हूँ, तो I have read it before as well. Dashrath was having 350 wives. Queens were 3, but wives were 350.
Yeah.
कहते हैं कि जब सीता माता को रावण से बचा लिया, युद्ध खत्म हो गया, तो सीता माता ने कहा कि भाई श्री राम को बुलाएं. तो श्री राम वहाँ पहुँचे, तो दोनों की आंखें भर आईं, जो भी है. फिर उसके बाद श्री राम कहते हैं कि मैंने जो भी युद्ध किया, रावण का वध किया, ये मैंने तुम्हारे लिए नहीं किया. ये मैंने इस समाज को बताने के लिए किया, बल्कि ये बताने के लिए किया कि इश्क वासु की जनरेशन की कोई महिला जिसको अगर कोई लेके गया है तो उसका क्या होगा. तो आई हैव नॉट डन दिस फॉर यू. बट वेरी स्ट्रेंजली जब परशुराम श्री राम के पास आते हैं, जब वो धनुष तोड़ देते हैं, उनका वाव तो तब भी वही था, क्षत्रियों को मारने वाला. बट स्टिल ही व्हाई ही डिडंट किल राम एट दैट टाइम. राम वो तो क्षत्रिय. हेलो दोस्तों एंड वेलकम टू द शो ऑफ बुक्स एंड थ्योरीज पॉडकास्ट. कुछ कहानियाँ ऐसी होती हैं जिनको जनरेशन बाय जनरेशन, सालों दर सालों आप सुनते जाओ, और आप हर बार उन कहानियों के अलग तात्पर्य निकालोगे, अलग मतलब निकालोगे, और आपको लगेगा कि आपने हर बार उन कहानियों में कुछ नया खोजा है. ऐसी एक कहानी है रामायण. मैंने भी रिसेंटली पढ़ी है. वाल्मीकि रामायण मैंने पहले पढ़ी है. हमने रामानंद सागर का सीरियल भी देखा हुआ है. पर जब ये बुक मेरे पास आई, रामा अ मैन ऑफ धर्मा, रिटन बाय प्रिया अरोरा मैम, पहले मैंने सोचा कि यार रामायण है, कितनी बार पढ़ूंगा. बट व्हेन आई स्टार्टेड रीडिंग दिस बुक, आई वाज लाइक इनटू दिस बुक, क्योंकि बहुत सारे ऐसे मिथ्स थे जो मुझे लगा कि शायद इस बुक ने मेरे ब्रेक कर दिए. सो टुडे वी हैव प्रिया अरोरा मैम ऑन आवर शो, जहां हम रामायण के बहुत सारे ऐसे टॉपिक को टच करेंगे जो मेरे हिसाब से मिथ हैं या नहीं है, हमें उसको खोजना ज़रूरी है. क्योंकि मैम ने बहुत रिसर्च की है, तो मैं मैम के साथ इस पूरे पॉडकास्ट को, इस कन्वर्सेशन को लेके जाने वाला हूँ. तो इस पूरे पॉडकास्ट में बने रहना, क्योंकि आज आपके दिमाग से भी शायद रामायण के बहुत सारे मिथ्स जो हैं वो ख़त्म होने वाले हैं. सो मैम, वेलकम टू आवर शो ऑफ बुक्स एंड थ्योरीज पॉडकास्ट. एंड फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, थैंक्स फॉर राइटिंग सच अ बुक. इट्स सच अ ब्यूटीफुल बुक.
थैंक यू फॉर योर काइंड वर्ड्स एंड थैंक यू फॉर हैविंग मी.
बहुत कम इतनी मोटी बुक होती है जिसको आप ख़त्म कर पाते हो. एंड ब्यूटी ऑफ दिस बुक इज़ यू हैव रिटन इन अ सो सिंपल वे कि आप कब 25-50 पेज पलट लेते हो पता नहीं पड़ता.
थैंक यू.
यू आर इनटू दैट. तो हम जस्ट टू बिगिन विद द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन, मैं थोड़ा उल्टा चलूँगा क्रोनोलॉजी में.
नो प्रॉब्लम.
लोग रामायण जानते हैं, ये जानते हैं सीता माता धरती में चली गई, फिर वहाँ कहानी खत्म हो जाती है। आई वॉन्ट टू नो, जो कई लोगों को नहीं पता है, राम भगवान ने अपनी देह कब त्यागी, कैसे त्यागी, उसके पीछे की कहानी क्या है?
So this is what happened. He, after Mata Sita went into the earth, he was devastated because he thought that, after 12 years of separation, when the boys, Love and Kush, when they came back, and he felt that now the people will change their mind. They won't say that, she should not be the queen. They'll allow her to come back. And he was very hopeful. But when she came back, she did not want to get into that problem with the people anymore. Because, the crowd is very fickle. 1 minute they say that, yes, come back. Next minute again, in 6 months, if they say, nahi, we don't agree, then again he'll be in some sankat. So she decided that better to avoid all this, let me go. And she goes. So he's obviously very devastated after that, but he continues to rule. And then after some time, he had come for a specific purpose. The avatar was for a specific purpose and for a specific period of time. Then Kala comes, the time comes in the form of a sannyasi. So he comes and he says, I want to meet with Sri Rama. So at that point of time, he says, but what we are talking about, no one must hear. And if anybody does hear it, then they have to be put to death.
Okay.
So he said, okay, fine, no problem. So to avoid any complication, he goes into a room and he says that, tells Lakshman, he says, you stand guard. Make sure that nobody comes in on all this because it has to be a private conversation. So he goes in and they're talking. And Kala says to him, he says that, you have taken birth with this much time you had allotted for yourself. That time is now come to an end. So if you want, you can stay longer. But I am just here to tell you that, the time span is over. So then he says, yes, no, I'm ready to go back. So while he's talking, Rishi Durvasa comes. And the Rishi Durvasa was very krodhi. So he comes and he says, I want to meet him now. So then Lakshman says, he's with some person and can you please wait? I'll help you. You tell me what you want. So, what do you mean you'll help me? I want to meet him. You call him. And he says, if you don't call him, I will curse the whole of Ayodhya. I will do this. He gave this whole thing. And so out of fear of, Durvasa's curse for the rest of the place, not for him, Lakshman said he went and disturbed them.
Okay.
He took on that thing on himself, the curse that, that
mar jayenge,
that wo mar jayenge, not the curse, the punishment for disturbing. He took it on himself. He opens the door and he says that, Rishi Durvasa is here, he wants to see you. So then Sri Rama comes out, he attends to Durvasa, everything is okay. And then he has to, punish his dearest brother. What can he do? And he doesn't know, he's in a real situation. How can I do this? And then he asks his guru, Vashishta, because the guru is always there to give you advice. So Vashishta says, if you banish somebody, exile somebody, it's as good as a death sentence in those days. Not like nowadays where we leave home and go live in different places. In those days, to be sent away from your home was actually a punishment. So he then says, okay, and he calls Lakshman and he says, you have to go. And he says, yes, you must follow through with what you committed. So yes, I'll go. But he goes and he doesn't get exiled. He goes, he sits on the bank of the Saryu. And he gives up his life.
Okay, so first Lakshman is the one who went.
Yes, he just gives up his life. And then Sri Rama decides that, it's his time also. So he goes and he goes into the Saryu. He just walks into the Saryu, and a lot of people go with him. A lot of people. And Hanuman ji, he comes from, when he hears all this, he comes from Kishkinda, and he also wants to go. He says, please take me. And he says, no. He says, you're not coming. He says, you have to stay behind, because I'm leaving with the duty of spreading my story, the story of Dharma, the story of that for future generations. And that's your job. So if you come with me, then who will spread my story? I leave that responsibility with you. So they say that now, whenever the message of Shri Ram is spoken, whenever that there is anything, Hanumanji comes to help in that process. So in a lot of places, when they do a play or something, they leave a seat.
Yes.
Because they say he'll be there. Anywhere, because where the message is being spread. So
इसमें भी एक मिथ है, मतलब मैंने कहीं पढ़ा था कि हनुमान जी मतलब जब कहते हैं कि नहीं हमें भी साथ चलना है, तो मतलब श्री राम को पता था कि हनुमान तो मेरे पीछे आएंगे ही आएंगे। तो उन्होंने क्या कहा कि अपनी एक अंगूठी जो है वो किसी दरार में गिरा दी और उनसे कहा कि हनुमान अंगूठी ढूंढ के लाओ। तो वो शायद बहुत छोटे से होके उसमें जाते हैं नीचे, और करते करते वो पाताल लोक में पहुंच जाते हैं। वहां जाकर उनको बहुत सारी अंगूठियां मिलती हैं। और फिर वो जब खो समझ में नहीं आता कि कौन सी अंगूठी श्री राम की है, तब फिर शायद जो पाताल में जो देवता होते हैं वो उनको बताते हैं कि ये तो लगातार कई सदियों, कई बार ये युग जो है बदलते रहते हैं, चल रहे हैं, हर बार राम तुम्हें अंगूठी खोवाते हैं और हर बार तुम ढूंढने आते हो, जब तक वो सरयू नदी में चले जाते हैं। तो ये मिथ है या जो आप सुना रहे हो वैसा?
नहीं, वाल्मीकि रामायण में ये नहीं है। अच्छा। ये कहानी नहीं है वाल्मीकि रामायण। अच्छा। क्योंकि वाल्मीकि रामायण एक्चुअली वाल्मीकि और श्री राम समकालीन थे। वो इट वाज अ कंटेम्पररी। और वो और वाल्मीकि गुरु थे और ज्येष्ठ भी थे। he was an elder in the community. So he wrote the Ramayana, his Ramayana, as a biography. So it's very factual. You will not find a lot of miracles, a lot of unusual things in the Valmiki Ramayana. So because it's written more as an itihasa. So it is called itihasa. Actually, Ramayana and Mahabharat, even in the Puranas and all our Shastras, when they refer to it, they refer to them as itihasa. And itihasa in Sanskrit means itihasa. It happened so. Aise hua tha. That is the meaning of itihasa. So if you're writing about something that actually happened as a contemporary, like if you write something about me or I write something about you, it will be different from somebody writing it many centuries later. The drishti is different. So, in Ramcharitmanas, Tulsidas ji's Ramcharitmanas, the treatment is completely different. Because Tulsidas ji was a bhakt. He was a Ram bhakt. And so, everything that he wrote was with that perspective.
थोड़ा elaborate करके,
थोड़ा सा with a very
hero की तरह दिखा के.
Exactly, with the as he was a divine. He focused more on the divinity, whereas Valmiki, being a contemporary and a rishi, and also he was a senior. Actually, he was a senior. For us, we can't imagine anybody can be Shri Ram senior, but at that time Valmiki was a senior. So when he wrote it not with that bhakti drishti. He wrote it as admiring his character, as Maryada Purushottam. So that is the difference actually.
Perfect. तो इसमें ना एक चीज और आती है जो स्पेशली फॉर द कैरेक्टर ऑफ सीता। कहते हैं कि जब सीता माता को रावण से बचा लिया, युद्ध खत्म हो गया, तो सीता माता ने कहा कि भाई श्री राम को बुलाएं। तो श्री राम वहाँ पहुँचे, तो दोनों की आंखें भर आईं जो भी है। फिर उसके बाद श्री राम कहते हैं कि मैंने जो भी युद्ध किया, रावण का वध किया, ये मैंने तुम्हारे लिए नहीं किया, ये मैंने इस समाज को बताने के लिए किया, बल्कि ये बताने के लिए किया कि इश्क वासु की जनरेशन की कोई महिला जिसको अगर कोई लेके गया है तो उसका क्या होगा। तो आई हैव नॉट डन दिस फॉर यू, whereas कि हम पूरी रामायण में सुनते हैं कि मतलब जब सीता जी को रावण ले जाता है तो राम लाइक बिकम्स क्रेजी फॉर हर, मतलब फूलों से बात करना, पत्तियों से बात करना, पेड़ों से बात करना, उनको हर जगह सीता दिखती थी। फिर भी वो वहां पर ऐसे प्रिटेंड करते हैं कि वो मैं तुम्हारे लिए कुछ नहीं किया है, मतलब ये तो मुझे एक धर्म है जो मुझे करना था, इसलिए किया।
I did it for dharma and not for.
So what's your view on that? मतलब और सीता को क्या लगा होगा उससे, मतलब अगर आज के जमाने में सोचे तो सीता would have got angry कि तुम घर से निकल जाओ।
She did get angry. Actually, she did get angry. So, see, we have to realize that there is no woman character in the Ramayana or the Mahabharata who's a weak character. They're all strong.
All strong.
All strong characters, especially Mata Sita. Very strong character. We think of her as, just obedient, never has an opinion of her own, very meek and mild. Which she was not that. She was a very assertive, very strong, very powerful person who did not need an advocate. She was her own advocate and perfectly capable of that. Now, what happens here is that you're right. When they were like two hearts that beat as one. So they loved each other dearly. And especially Sri Ram. The description of his grief when she is taken away, he tells Lakshman, he says, I cannot live without her. She is my, just my very existence. He says, you go back to Ayodhya, you tell Bharat to rule. I cannot leave this place. I have to have my wife. I have to get her back, no matter what. And you see, in those days, a king could, not for a king, anybody could marry any number of women.
Yes.
Right? But he did not want anybody else. He only wanted her. And he knew that she was taken away by Ravan. So he knew that, that she had been there. She's been there for so many months. He knew that. But yet, he wanted only her. So, when the whole thing, the whole story of when he's looking for her, he's crying.
Yes.
The whole time he's like, he sees her in everything. If he sees the deer, he says, oh, their beautiful eyes remind me of her. If he sees the birds, he says, oh, she used to love to play with the swans. Everything reminds him of her. So then it's very odd that when he rescues her and she comes forward, it's very odd that he suddenly behaves all cold. And he looks at her and he says, I only did this for dharma, I didn't do this for you. That just seems a contradiction.
Yes.
So what it is actually, when she was coming, he had these mixed emotions. Of course, he was overjoyed to see her. He was also concerned that, she had stayed in Ravan's house for almost a year. They were going back to Ayodhya. He knew that people will say all sorts of rubbish, which people do. They did then as they do now.
Yes.
Our human nature has not changed.
Yes.
He knew she will be what they call nowadays trolled.
Yes.
He knew that. And he was concerned about her. He was concerned that how will this work? Nobody wants to be spoken badly of, especially someone as sensitive and as pure as Sita ji, right? So he says, okay, fine. In his mind, he says, he puts up this act so that she will actually go ahead and assert her purity. He wanted her to speak up and ek bar to say that, I know I stayed here for 1 year, but I'm still as pure. He wanted her to verbalize that.
तभी वो कहती है ना कि मतलब मैं लक्ष्मण मैं अग्नि परीक्षा देने तैयार हूँ.
Exactly. So what
I think she is the one who says.
She is the one who says. So what he says to her, that yes, I just did this for dharma. He's forcing her to speak up and defend herself, and not for him, but for other people, so that when they hear that, then they will not troll her. That was his hope. So when he says that to her, she gets very upset. She says, you're talking to me like an ordinary man talks to an ordinary woman. And I'm not an ordinary woman. I'm Bhumija. I'm from the earth. And she says that my character is being called into question here. So she says, then she tells, looks at, she's very strong-willed, huh?
Yeah.
So she tells Lakshman, she says, Chita me kuru saumitre. Chita is the pyre. Me kuru is make me a pyre. And Lakshman, of course, is like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? All the bad things are put on him to do, poor guy. So he's looking and he looks at his brother to say, should I do? And he's just looking straight. He doesn't,
Any reaction? Or...
Yeah, so then he does it. And she walks through the fire and comes out. When she comes out, Agni Dev brings her out. He carries her out, like a father, it's described.
Okay.
Like a father carries his daughter, and he says to Sri Rama, he says that here is your Sita. I am Sakshi, because Agni is the ultimate Sakshi. I am Sakshi that she is completely pure. And you know what he says? He says, of course I know. He says, I know she's pure. I didn't do this for me. I did this because I knew people will say bad things about her. I wanted her to make a point so that people don't troll her. He didn't use the word troll, of course, but I'm using the word troll.
That's perfectly fine.
But yeah, that's why he did it. So, it was an act. It wasn't directed to her. In fact, he even tells her, actually gives her a hint. Because when he says, I did this for dharma, he says, people will look upon you as a blind man looks upon a bright lamp. So you see, in that he's saying that she is the bright light. The fault is with the people, the blind man, right? The fault is not with the light. So he gives her that hint that why he's telling her to do it.
Yes.
Not telling her to do it, why he is behaving the way he's behaving. He's saying people will look upon you as a blind man looks upon a lamp. So the fault is then with the people, not with the lamp. The fault here again is with the people, not with her.
Beautiful thought.
Yeah, that's right.
Beautiful thought. So इसी कड़ी में आगे मतलब while I was researching, I came to know that जब दोबारा वो वाल्मीकि के आश्रम में रहती हैं, लव कुश आते हैं, and when Ram says कि now you come back. So this time, because Sita's character was like a powerful woman.
Very powerful.
So this time she said कि no, I have already done that Agni Shakshi once.
Right.
Now I don't want to prove myself. So I will not be coming back. And that's why she goes into her.
She does come back. Actually, she comes back.
Okay.
What happens is, when he sees Love and Kush, so, in some stories, there's that horse and then they stop the horse. And that's not there in Valmiki Ramayana.
Yeah.
So what happens in Valmiki Ramayana, he's doing the Ashwamedha Yagya and he calls a lot of rishis and that was the tradition. All the famous people were called. The rich and the famous and the learned.
Just like Ambani's wedding.
Exactly. So everybody was called for this grand event. And Valmiki came, not Sita ji, only Valmiki came with Love and Kush. And Love and Kush at that time were about 12 years old. And they had beautiful voices. He had actually taught them this whole Ramayana. He had taught them like they would sing it. Because it's in verse, it's meant to be sung. And so he had taught it to them and he says to them, because he wants them to reunite with their father. So I guess he could have taken them and said, here are your sons, but he didn't do it that way.
अच्छा, sorry to interrupt.
Yes, no, go ahead.
श्री राम को ये नहीं पता था ना कि वाल्मीकि के आश्रम में सीता जी रह रही है?
Oh, he knew.
He knew.
Oh, yeah. He knew that.
Okay.
So then the Valmiki tells the boys, you go and you sing the story in front of the palace, in all these important places, city center and all these places, you go sing. Because he knew then the message will go to Sri Rama and then he will call them. Which is exactly what happened. He calls them.
Because the audience ko pata hoना Sri Ram was he himself was a musician and he loved music. I think I have read your book.
He had all the 64 kalas. In those days, when you had an education, if you were a learned person, you also learnt all these various colors. So Sangeet Vidya was part of it.
Part of it, हाँ.
Yes.
You have
So he
mentioned
was good.
somewhere that
He was good
very
at
good in
everything.
musician.
He was what they call an all-rounder.
हाँ. Sorry to come back to your
Yes.
love and kush.
So the boys go into the palace and he's sitting there and they sing for him. Not the whole thing, just maybe one canto or whatever they sing. And they sing so beautifully and he's so impressed with their singing. He says, give them some gold coins, which is what Rajas used to do to reward artists. They would give them
But
gold.
Ram was knowing that they were
He didn't know yet.
He don't know. Okay.
But the resemblance between him and the boys was very striking. They were like little Xerox copies.
Okay.
So you could see him, and that happens sometimes. You see you see the child and you see the parents. Say, "My gosh, this is a little you."
Yes.
So that's what they were. And so then he says, "Give them gold coins." They say, "We don't want it." So that's because they were told. Actually, Valmiki told them, if you're offered anything, don't take it because you're sannyasis. You don't need gold and all that. We don't need that. So they say no. Then he asks, he says, who is your guru and all this. Then they say that it's Valmiki and they're 12 years old. And then everybody gets to know that these are the boys. Okay. When he gets to know that these are his sons, then he feels that, now these boys are grown up, they've come back. Maybe the people will now accept Sita ji to come back. Because that's what happens, in families. I have this thing that when two people run away and get married, and the parents get very upset and they say, listen, you're cut out, we don't want to see you again. Some years they will come. You're out of the family. But the moment they have children, they are then everything changes. So that's what he thought. He says, now the boys are here. Maybe the people will be okay with her coming back. So he asked Valmiki, he says, can you ask her if she will come back and if she will once come to the Sabha and just say in the Sabha that all this doubts that they had were unnecessary because she is absolutely pure. That's all she needs to just come and just assert her purity once in the Sabha. And then the people, I'm sure, he says, I'm sure the people will say, come back. So Valmiki says, yes, I'll arrange this. So he goes and he tells her, she comes. So she comes into the Sabha and she says, if I have been pure, and she says all that, and then she says, but if I have never ever looked at anybody other than my husband, if I've never deviated from my husband, if I've never been unfaithful in thought, word and deed to my husband, then may the earth open up and I'll go in. That was a curveball. They were not expecting that. He was not expecting that. He thought she would just assert her purity and they would go together. They would be reunited. But she asserted her purity and asked to be absorbed by the earth. So this was, he was devastated because the earth opened and she went in. And he was like, just when he thought they would be reunited. So the question is why she did that. So some people say, obviously she was upset and, why should she keep doing this and all that. But that was not the reason. You see, their relationship was not a relationship with any ego problems. They did not have that issue. So it wasn't an ego issue. What it was she knew that the crowd is not something that is steady. People's opinions are very fickle, especially in a crowd. 1 minute they'll say one thing, next minute they're with this one, 1 minute they're for this person, next minute they don't like that person. That's the nature of a crowd. So she did not want a situation where she's accepted and then after 1 year again, they say, no, actually, this is wrong, that is wrong. Then what would he do? Again he'll send her? So she felt, no, let's just end this. So it was more like a selfless act, I would say, not an act out of ego. That was not her character. She was a very strong woman, but she was very unselfish.
पर उनको यही पता होगा ना कि अगर मैं फिर आ जाऊंगी और फिर कहीं पब्लिक ऐसी बात करेगी तो श्री राम को ही दुख होगा.
Exactly. और वो करेंगे क्या? फिर से वो पूरा ड्रामा फिर से शुरू हो जाएगा कि अच्छा अब क्या करें.
इसमें ना मैं मतलब बचपन में जब हम कहानी सुनते थे आई रिमेम्बर मेरे फादर मुझे सुनाते थे रात को, तो धरती खुलती है, माँ अंदर जाती है, तो श्री राम भागकर उनके बाल पकड़ लेते हैं।
अच्छा अच्छा।
और शायद कुछ बाल टूट के उनके हाथ में जाते हैं। तो जब वो मुट्ठी खोलते हैं तो एक छोटा सा छिपकली लिजर्ड जैसा एक होता है, जिसको आई डोंट नो व्हाट इट्स से इन इंग्लिश, बट हमारे यहाँ उसको ना एक चमकीली सी सांप जैसी लगती है।
अच्छा।
उसको सीता की लट बोलते हैं हमारे यहाँ। इन द स्मॉल सिटीज दे कॉल इट सीता की लट।
अच्छा अच्छा।
जिसको इट्स जस्ट लाइक लिजर्ड, ब्लैक कलर की। तो हमारे जब वो कभी दिखती थी, बिकॉज वी यूज्ड टू लिव इन अ फार्म हाउस, तो जब वो कभी दिख जाती पापा कहते थे ये ना सीता की लट है। तो मैं कहते सीता की लट क्या है? तो कहते थे जब वो ना राम भगवान ने उनको रोकने की कोशिश करी तो उनके कुछ बाल टूट के आ गए।
अच्छा अच्छा।
तो सीता माता नहीं चाहती थी कि उनके बाल भी छूट जाए। तो जब उन्होंने मुट्ठी खोली तो वो दे बिकम दैट लिजर्ड एंड दे वेंट इनटू द फॉरेस्ट।
So this is not in Valmiki Ramayana.
These are all the
but there are many stories that come up around it, and a lot of them come up with a sense of bhakti, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But you know, if you read this Valmiki Ramayana, it's very natural. You know, you won't find any miracles or anything like that, because, and there's a reason for that. When Sri Ram took this avatar, he took it to kill Ravan. And if we remember, Ravan had a vardhan. And what was that vardhan? Ki he will not, nobody can kill him. He cannot be killed by a deva, he cannot be killed by an asura, he cannot be killed by a rakshasa, cannot be killed by a kinnara, not a pashu, not a pakshi, not a naga. And in Ahankar, he said कि don't worry about human beings. वो मनुष्य तो बिल्कुल weak है. I will deal with them in no time. So you can leave them out of the list. और वो loophole बन गया. So when Sri Ram took birth in this avatar, he did not know his divyata. He was not aware of it. So everything he achieved in his life, he achieved with effort, without any divine help. You see, this is a very important thing to know. Everything he did with his own effort, not with any divinity.
Yeah, like Krishna had those divine power.
Sri Krishna had that. So with Sri Krishna, from birth itself, he did miracles. You know, the prison doors open and all those things, Govardhan, Parvat, all these things were natural then, but not in this.
That's the one reason where sometimes people debate on this, that whether Ram should be called as Lord or he is a normal human being.
So he was a divine avatar in the form of a normal human being. So he was both.
Yes.
He had to be a normal human being. If he wasn't a normal human being, he could not have killed Ravana.
Yes.
So that's why it was essential for him to be born as an ordinary human being. Not ordinary. He was extraordinary in his character. But he did not have any, in this avatar, any help of his divinity. Though he was divine.
Very true. But this, ये angle ना कभी सोचने में नहीं आता. But yes.
So he was divine, and his energy was divine. But he lived as a regular human being. So everything he does is very inspiring.
Very inspiring.
Because, you know, if you think, if he could do it as a human being, then why can't we? We should also be able to do it.
Yes.
If he did as Bhagwan, then we'll say, Acha, obviously he's Bhagwan. How can we compete with Bhagwan? No, forget compete. How can we even come close to doing that? But if as an ordinary human being, he was able to lead such a exemplary life, then even if we do a little bit of that, is something.
True. I remember in 2003 or something, I was doing some site surveys near Gorakhpur, Nepal border and all those areas. So it was night. So around, it was getting darker. So my driver said, sir, this road is not safe and we need to stay somewhere because it's a very bad area and all those things. So like, okay, let's see something where we can go. And we were almost in an area where there was nothing. So we started driving. It's like, okay, whenever we see some board or something, we'll turn over it. So we reached some place where it was written like Sitamani. Temple Sitamani, and there was an arrow to that.
Achha.
Then it was less than 2-3 kilometers. So I said, yeah, I think this is some places where it seems like some people we can find. So we can at least stay there. तो हमने ना गाड़ी वहाँ घुमा ली. So हम forest के बीच से चलते रहे. It was foggy, I think January February का दिन था. तो हम थोड़ी देर बाद एक जगह पहुंचे. Between the forest there was a beautiful temple.
अच्छा.
Beautiful temple. उस टेम्पल में जब अंदर गए तो वहाँ पे एक्चुअली जो सीता जी की हम जो बात कर रहे थे, इट वाज लाइक पूरा वहाँ पे, आई डोंट नो वो टेम्पल अभी भी होगा, पूरा राज्यसभा बनी हुई है, ऑल एवरीवन इज जंपिंग, और पूरी स्टैच्यूज बनी हुई हैं, और वो टेम्पल बीच से फटा हुआ है. And Sita ji is inside.
Oh, so that's
she is going inside like this, and Lord Ram is jumping to her.
Yeah, to stop.
And the beauty is that उस मंदिर के चारों तरफ नदी बहती है.
Oh,
it was so beautiful. अच्छा कि तुम कहाँ गए हम?
Amazing.
I don't know, मैं तो पता नहीं वो मंदिर कहाँ है exactly, वो इतने साल हो गए, but I really wish कि मैं वो मंदिर एक बार जरूर जाऊँ. फिर हम वहाँ गए, हमने वहाँ के पुजारी से बात की, भाई जी हमारे पास कहीं जगह नहीं है सोने की, एंड वी नीड हेल्प क्योंकि रात बहुत हो गई. तो उन्होंने कहा ठीक है, हमारे यहाँ कुछ गेस्ट हाउस टाइप रूम्स हैं, हम आपको एक दे देते हैं. तो उन्होंने मुझे एक रूम दिया, हम वहाँ पे रुके रात में.
अच्छा.
देन मॉर्निंग में वहाँ पे बड़ी अच्छी आरती वारती हुई, वो करके
वेरी नाइस,
वहाँ प्रसाद करके हम फिर वहाँ से निकले.
वेरी नाइस.
बट वो सच अ ब्यूटीफुल टेंपल,
आई कैन इमेजिन,
मतलब टोटली डिवाइन उसको बोलते हैं ना, टोटली डिवाइन. Coming back to other myths.
No, this is lovely to know, you know.
रावण जो कैरेक्टर है, मतलब he is so interesting. मतलब I was reading books that Ravan actually was in his previous birth, he was not a asur. उसके बारे में थोड़ा लाइट थ्रो कर सके. And why that? Because he was a good person at that time. वो द्वारपाल था ना.
जय विजय. Actually, this was the second birth of Jai Vijay.
Yes.
The first one was Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu.
Yes.
And then they were born as this
Ravan
and Kumbhakarna.
Yes.
So the thing with Ravan is, I don't know about his previous birth because that's not mentioned here. I only know him as.
You've not mentioned your book.
It's not. That
Jai
might
Vijay की. Jai Vijay actually शायद विष्णु भगवान के
द्वारपाल थे, and they had
दुर्वासा के अंश थे.
They had this curse that they would be born as Shatrus of Vishnu. And which is in 3 births. So the next one was Shishupal, and who is the other person? Shishupal, and in the Mahabharat thing. It'll come back. I have a senior moment right now, forgetting things. But anyway, so in this Ravan, in his form as Ravan, he was obviously the enemy of Vishnu, but he was a very talented person. Actually, he was very talented. He was a Veda Pandit. He had came from a very good family line. His father.
I was coming on that. If you can narrate that story.
Yes.
वो कुबेर के भाई थे.
He was Kuber's brother. His father was Vishravas. His
and बड़ा interesting है. वो कुबेर के भाई थे. And कुबेर शंकर जी के साले हैं. Kuber is brother of Parvati Mata. In some relation.
Yes.
So एक देखा है तो Ravan is like some cousin brother of Parvati ji. In that sense.
In that way. Yes. So he was very talented. He was very good at playing the veena. He was a music. He also had probably the 64 kalas. So you know, in every way, he was also a Shiv Bhakt. So, but he had one big fault. And that big fault was he was very self-absorbed. He was all about himself. That is called an asuri pravritti. You know, when you have that asuri pravritti, where you don't care about other people, you want your satisfaction, even if it causes hurt to someone else. And you know, that temperament is actually common even today. You know, there are many people who, so long as they get their काम done, मेरा काम हो गया तो कोई बात नहीं, किसी का जो भी हो, you know, that temperament, that was Ravan's temperament. So just think about this. He wanted Ma Sita, right? She did not want him, but he wanted her. Yes. He did not care that she did not want him, right? He says, by hook or by crook, I'm going to have her. That was his downfall. Otherwise, in fact, you know, when Hanumanji sees him for the first time, he sees him when Indrajit ties him up, and he allows himself to be tied up because he wants to be taken to Ravan. So otherwise Hanumanji could have got out of that thing in two seconds. And so he goes and he sees Ravan sitting on this throne, and he goes in there and he's looking at him, and he's actually very impressed. He says, "What a magnificent person! Look at his character."
संस्कृत में एक word बोलते हैं.
He says,
sorry, संस्कृत तो भूल गया मैं, but मैंने वो word पढ़ा.
Now you're also my senior moment has transferred to you.
Mine is already started. नहीं, रूपम, अहो रूपम.
Yes,
अहो रूपम,
yes.
he said.
He was good looking.
Yeah, he's very good looking.
He was well built, good looking. He was impressive. He had a presence. And so he says that, it's such a waste that with all this, he has this character that is going to pull him down. So, that is in life. You see some people, they have everything going for them, and yet they have such a bad flaw, that it takes away everything. So, people who say that, oh no, Ravan was a hero. No, he wasn't a hero. He wasn't a hero because of this flaw. He could have been if he didn't have this flaw.
Even in some books or some myths talks about like कि रावण ने जो किया उसको सब पता था. He was so ज्ञानी कि उसको पता था कि ये राम जो है ये भगवान का रूप है, ये मुझे मारेंगे तो मुझे मोक्ष मिलेगा. So he intentionally did that.
No, that's not the way it comes across in because it's such an old ancient story.
People
over the ages, people have changed it. So in fact, in my retelling, one of the things I have tried to do is not deviate from the original.
Yes.
So I've tried. Of course, it's not a translation. So it's not word to word accurate. And when you do a retelling, there is something of your you put into it which comes from within. The author puts into it.
One thing which comes out from your book, मैंने note भी करके रखा था, अहिल्या की कहानी.
Oh yes.
मतलब मैंने जो रामानंद सागर में देखी या मैंने और उधर देखा,
She was strict.
हाँ, उसमें ये था कि वो वहाँ पहुँचते हैं विश्वामित्र के साथ उस गार्डन में, उस आश्रम में. वहाँ उनको एक पत्थर मिलता है और उस पत्थर को विश्वामित्र कहते हैं इस पत्थर पे पाँव रखो. जब वो पाँव रखते हैं तो वो एक सुंदर वो अहिल्या बन जाता है. हाँ. बट इन योर बुक it's totally opposite.
It's totally opposite.
विश्वामित्र कहते हैं कि ये वो डिवाइन है, वो तपस्या में लीन है, तुम इनके पैर छुओ.
Exactly.
So अगर उस स्टोरी को थोड़ा आप elaborate करें थोड़ा, why she was in that state.
Why she was in that state. So
and Valmiki Ramayana is written in that way.
In that way.
It's not stone and everything.
No. What it is let me start from the story then. So Ahilya was very beautiful. Right? She was one of the actually most beautiful women that was ever there. And Indra was always looking for beautiful women. He was very lustful actually. So he sees her and he wants to have a relationship with her. And she is actually, she doesn't want to, she is a loyal person. But when he comes and he tells her, he says, you're so beautiful and all that, she gets flattered that someone like Indra, who is in such a high position, is showing her this attention. And so she actually agrees to the relationship. In other versions, they say that Indra tricks her by coming in the disguise of her husband, right? And then she doesn't realize it's her husband and therefore she has the relationship. But that's not the way Valmiki tells the story. She actually
very
knew.
Beautiful. एक जो human nature है वो यही होता है.
That's it.
मतलब today if someone says कि okay Aishwarya Rai want to be your girlfriend, एक बार दिमाग में आ जाएगा. या someone calls to Amitabh Bachchan wants to be your boyfriend. So, it's just like that.
That's it. So she was very impressed by the fact that he was showing her attention, and so she did it willingly. This whole thing. So that's why she has to do this tapasya to get over it. She's kind of like, it's a punishment. It's like that she will be sitting there like a stone.
Like a stone,
not
without
that she
eating.
Is a stone. Yes, without eating, without that she does not that she was turned into like that a stone, but she would be living like a stone. Just in tapasya. almost like an inanimate object.
Yes.
That's what it says. And she was, after years and years of tapasya, you know, she had washed away that sin that she had committed by her tapasya. And when you do tapasya, then you actually become, you start glowing from within. You get a tejas, you know, just from that, doing that tapasya. So that's why Vishwamitra says, touch the feet. You see?
इवन विश्वामित्र की कहानी बड़ी स्ट्रॉन्ग, मतलब आई हैव विश्वामित्र के बारे में मैंने पहली बार आपकी बुक में पढ़ा, मतलब
अच्छा,
द स्टोरी ऑफ
the whole Vishwamitra,
how Kaushik became Vishwamitra.
How Kaushik became Vishwamitra.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It's a very interesting story because, and also shows that, you know, this Varnashram that we had in those days, Varna, was very fluid. It wasn't by birth. It was by your choice of profession.
And it was not actually caste. जो हम caste से relate करते हैं,
it's not exist ही नहीं करता था. There was no such thing as caste.
Yes, it was work.
It was work, and all the 4 varnas were respected. You know, on a different note, I'll tell you, in the Mahabharata, I just actually have been reading that, and so it's fresh in my mind. But Bhishma Pitama talks about the composition of the Parishad. The Parishad is what advises the king, you know, and the Parishad was actually like we have today, you know, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. You know, they're the ones who actually are the decision makers.
Yes.
And it was like that in Vedic times too. So the Parishad was composed of people from all Varnas. So there were like 4 Brahmins, 4 Shudras, equal. 4 Shudras, 4 Brahmins. It had 21 Vaishyas. You know why? Because economy was important then also.
True.
And 8 Kshatriyas, because defense was also important. And look at today. What are we focused on? Economy and defense?
Yes.
So, you know, I digress now. What was you asked me a different question. Vishwamitra. So, Vishwamitra was a king. He was Kaushik. And he used to do all these conquests. One day he landed up with his army on the way at Vashishta's ashram. And Vashishta had a cow. You know, that cow, that cow was you know, the daughter of Nandini. It was a gift actually, the cow to him. And he used to use the milk to make ghee and this.
Just picture ashram
for his ashram. Right? It wasn't but it was a wish fulfilling cow. Like, you know, like Kamadhenu. It had that same, it was a wish fulfilling cow. It could do other things also. So when Kaushik comes with his army, Vashisht says that you stay, I will feed and entertain you and your soldiers. So he says, okay, he accepts the hospitality. And he puts up a lavish spread. And they describe it like, you know, every kind of flavor. You know, there was sweet, there was salty, there was sour, you know, all the different flavors that make for a complete meal. So, this Kaushik was like amazed. He says, how can you in this forest here, in this ashram, produce this meal which is difficult even in my palace? You know? So he was quite amazed. So he says, oh, it's not me, it's my cow. My wish fulfilling cow who has done all this. So then when Kaushik, when he hears it, he says that then I should have that cow. Because I'm the king. What will you do with the cow like this? You know, I need the cow. And he says, I will pay you for the cow. And he offers him, you know, different amounts of money.
I think
first the cash, then the horses, then
75,000
cows. So
all
these things. He says, I will give you compensation for this. You give me this cow. So Vishwamitra says, the cow is not for sale. This is my cow. This cow is for my, you know, for my yagyas and for all that I do for my ashram, and she's not for sale. So I'm not going to sell. So no matter what price, he said, I'm not. Then he wanted to take the cow by force. Right?
तो युद्ध करते हैं, फिर भी हार जाते हैं.
Then the cow comes running to Vashishtha and says that, listen, you have so much power as a rishi, you know, much more power than a Kshatriya. Actually, rishis had tremendous power, right?
Yes.
Just mental power. They had these. So he says, okay, and then he says, with one he destroys the whole army. Then Vishwamitra, sorry, I keep calling him Vishwamitra, he was Kaushik then. He's yet to become Vishwamitra. So then he says that, how did this happen? He can't, it becomes an ego issue for him. That how can a rishi defeat someone like me? This great Kshatriya that I am. So then he realizes that the power you get from tapasya is more than the power you get from being a Kshatriya. You know, that power is greater.
Yes.
So he decides that he is going to
Get this
power and be better than Vashishta, which is what he does. He goes then, and there's, it's a long story of all the things he does. And finally, after many misses, including with Menaka, he gets, he meets her and then he gets distracted for 10 years and then goes back to his tapasya. So he keeps getting distracted.
His main का वाला topic भी बड़ा strong, मतलब it's very thought provoking है. आपने मेनका को use किया 10-12 साल, then you suddenly realize जाओ वापस मैं भूल गया था. मतलब ये क्या है?
Yeah. So you see, this is what it's telling us, that even great people like rishis, even great tapasvis can get distracted by the flesh.
इसलिए कहते हैं काम मोक्ष, काम क्रोध, मोह.
Yeah, those are the deadly vices.
But ये जो विश्वामित्र वाली कहानी है, जो संबाला काऊ वाली, ये similar story परशुराम वाली भी है.
That was with his mother though.
हाँ, मतलब जो उसमें कहानी है कि some king came to his father's house as उनके father.
Kartavirya Arjuna.
हाँ, वो वहाँ भी वो सर्व करते हैं.
He comes and he tries to take the cow.
हाँ, वो कामधेनु से सर्व करते हैं.
Yes.
Then he says कि मैं कामधेनु गाँव ले जाऊँगा.
Yes, and then he kills the father.
हाँ, he kills the. हाँ. फिर वो परशुराम कहते हैं मैं जितने क्षत्रिय हैं सबको मार दूँगा.
Yes, because actually what happened was, you see, avatars takes place every time there is atyachar in the world. And that's why in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. So that srijamyaham happens every time there is an increase in atyachar. So at that time of Parshuram, the Kshatriyas had become atyachari. Not the way it's told, they had become atyachari in general. The symbol of it was this thing of killing Jamadagni.
इसमें एक और बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग एंगल है कि ये शायद बहुत सारे लोगों को पता नहीं होगा. सब लोग ये समझते हैं कि दशरथ had 3 queens, कौशल्या, सुमित्रा and कैकेयी.
But get 350.
Yeah, 350. मतलब it's in your book, although I have read it before, क्योंकि मैं अपने YouTube के लिए बहुत रिसर्च करता रहता हूँ, तो I have read it before as well. Dashrath was having 350 queen, not say queen, wives. Queens were 3, but wives were 350.
Yeah.
इसके पीछे की स्टोरी आप बताओगे या मैं बताऊँ?
Well, one of the stories as to why that he married so many is because that was the time that Parshurama was killing all the Kshatriyas. But he would not kill them if they were getting married.
Recently
married.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to make the wives.
It's very funny. मतलब वो शायद उन्होंने
so he kept getting married just to avoid getting killed by Parshurama.
मैंने जहाँ पढ़ा हुआ ये था कि दशरथ ने कुछ गुप्तचर लगा रखे थे कि जब भी परशुराम आ रहे हो खबर लगाओ.
चलो मैं शादी
करने बैठ जाऊंगा. तो he did 350 times he married.
Yeah.
But very strangely जब परशुराम श्री राम के पास आते हैं, जब वो धनुष तोड़ देते हैं, उनका वाव तो तब भी वही था, क्षत्रियों को मारने वाला. But still why he didn't kill Ram at that time? Because Ram was a Kshatriya and Parshuram has a vow कि मैं तो क्षत्रियों को मारूंगा.
It was not all Kshatriyas. Actually, to be honest, his avatar, he's also, avatar of Vishnu. He's in the that top 10.
Yes.
Top 10 list. And the reason was that, as I said, the Kshatriyas had become atyachari. So, I guess also, he had a lot of insight. He had a lot of, rishis, and when you do so much tapasya, you actually have mental powers that ordinary people don't have. He probably knew that he was an avatar.
Yes.
He probably knew his purpose. Because Vishwamitra also knew his purpose. That's why he took him. He also arranged the marriage with arrange for that marriage to happen.
हाँ, वो खुद ही लेके जाते हैं.
लेके जाते हैं with the excuse कि I want to show you the dhanush.
Yes.
Dhanush was an excuse.
Yes.
He wanted him to lift the dhanush, and he knew he could lift it.
He could lift it.
He knew that he will be able to do it.
और एक और चीज़ ना मुझे आपकी बुक से पता है, मतलब पता नहीं शायद पहले कहीं पता रही हो या I have recalled it, जब मैंने बुक में देखा कि जो राम, भरत, लक्ष्मण, शत्रुघ्न तीनों की जो वाइफ्स थी, they all were sisters. Sita, Sumitra,
cousins.
Cousin sisters, but they were sisters actually, na?
Yeah. Urmila was Janak's daughter.
हाँ.
But the other two, Mandvi and Shrutakirti, they were his brothers.
Brothers.
Yeah, but they were
all cousin sisters एक तरह से. ये मुझे इसमें पता चला था. I was not having that information.
Yes.
मैम, क्योंकि ये रामायण ऐसी चीज़ मैं डिस्कशन करने बैठूंगा तो मैं 2-3 घंटे का पॉडकास्ट हो जाएगा.
2-3 दिन.
हाँ, 2-3 दिन भी निकल जाएंगे, कोई भरोसा नहीं. तो वन लास्ट क्वेश्चन जो मैंने, because I want to confine it to the myths only.
Of course.
जो कहानी है कि भाई जब ब्रिज बनाना था इंडिया से श्रीलंका, आप तो ये बोलेंगे राम सेतु बनाना था, तो जब पत्थर डूब रहे थे तो उन्होंने राम लिखा और पत्थर डाले और तैरने लग गए. बट आई हैव हर्ड दैट वाल्मीकि रामायण में राम लिखने वाला कोई कंसेप्ट नहीं था. दिस इज जस्ट अ मिथ व्हाट पीपल आफ्टरवर्ड्स. तुलसी जी ने वो कर दिया.
दिस इज भक्ति भाव से
टू
शो दैट डिविनिटी कि नाम में इतना डिविनिटी है कि पत्थर भी तैरने लगे.
हाँ. But what was the reality?
So the reality was that everything he did was with effort. So Varun Dev कहते हैं कि the ocean is very difficult to cross because it's very deep. So he says, but I will show you a place where there is a pre-existing ridge in the ocean bed.
Okay.
वो उठा हुआ है, the ocean bed. He says that there you can put boulders and logs and raise the level. So, if you imagine, if this is the ocean bed and the ridge comes up to here, then you put a few logs and it'll come up to the thing and then you can walk across. So, he says, Varun Dev also says, you ask this Nala to do it because he is the son of Vishwakarma.
ये बहुत कम लोगों को पता होगा. Nal was actually son of Vishwakarma.
In the sense that for his energy. So, he will be able to do it. And so he does. But they do it by exactly the way that is described, by taking the big boulders. And Vanas are very strong. So they pick up these big boulders, place them there with logs. They held strings on either side so that it's straight. But the interesting thing, it was built in a 10:1 ratio. And currently, if you measure the Ram Setu, it's in a 10:1 ratio.
Oh, that's mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana.
In the Valmiki Ramayana.
Oh, perfect.
It's amazing, actually.
These things actually clearly bifurcate that it's not a mythology, but it's an history.
Yes.
क्योंकि ये हमेशा डिबेट चलता है. I'll remember मैंने एक बार ना एक वीडियो डाला था, रावण वाली कहानी का मैंने डाला था. It's a short video. And generally hashtags लगाते हैं, तो I just hashtag mythology. And I started receiving so many comments कि how could you write it a mythology? I said कि I don't believe it's not a mythology, it's an history. I do believe that. I just did a hashtag because so that people, it should reach to more people.
Right.
Because बहुत सारे लोग ऐसे हैं जो अभी mythology बोलते हैं.
Actually, that's true. It's sad. I'll tell you why it became called a mythology. Is because at the time of the British, they said, J.S. Mill actually, he wrote the history of British India. And in that he said that all this is mythology.
Yes.
और तब से ये mythology नाम लग गया इसके साथ. So people refer to the genre as mythology.
Yes.
And not, this is actually Itihas.
But it is very sad, हमारी publishing industry भी इसको mythology ही बोलती है.
I know. Yes.
They will tag it as in that category.
I know, even my book, and I have a whole chapter in there about why it's not mythology and why it is history. History in the sense, not history the way you write a history book today, with chronology and dates and all that. It is, the basic story is true.
Yes.
The basic events are true.
It's correct.
Is there exaggeration? Yes.
आप देखिए,
100% exaggeration.
There are many history non-fictional books which are coming because I am an avid reader.
Yeah.
Every week I read 2-3 books.
अच्छा.
तो मेरे पास almost all publishers send me books.
अच्छा.
Books I'm getting like non-fiction historical books. When I read them, it's like you are reading a fiction book. You have characters, they are talking, they are fighting, everything is there. So you will feel like you are writing a perfectly fictional book.
Right.
But the base is completely non-fiction.
Exactly.
The same storylines, everything is same, characters are same.
Yeah.
It's only that the way you are presenting, it's a non-fiction way of presenting.
Right.
So similar thing I think is with Ramayan.
So he existed. Sri Ram existed, Ram Rajya existed. He is our Purvaj.
Yes.
And a Purvaj for all of us, you know, regardless of whatever religion we follow or if we don't follow also. He's still our Purvaj. So this is something that is very special.
Very special.
Very special.
Before we close this podcast, one last thing. I had one podcast with Abbas Maldiyar. He has written a book called Babar.
Okay.
He is a historian. He has researched very well. And then he has written a book called Babar. That's also with Penguin. So when I was having a conversation with him, he gave me a very good information. Then I'm still astonished to know about it. जो हमारा राम मंदिर बना है, जो बाबरी मस्जिद के ऊपर बना था, उस पे कितना हंगामा हुआ, कितने लोगों की जानें चली गई. He told me because Babarnama was a personal diary of Babar.
Exactly.
वो खुद लिखता था.
Yeah.
He informed कि जो actually बाबरी मस्जिद इसको हम बोलते थे, there was actually not a मस्जिद.
अच्छा.
बाबर का एक जनरल था, I think some sheikh or something. अयोध्या का जो उस टाइम पे शेख था, उसने because Babar was a homosexual.
Oh, okay.
He was actually a bisexual.
Bisexual, okay.
Initially he was homosexual, then उसकी शादी वादी करवा दी, then he became a bisexual. And he was having a very close relationship with a guy called Babri.
Oh.
And he was just a 12-year-old boy.
Oh.
So he used to spend a lot of time having a pleasure with Babri.
अच्छा.
बाबर ने अपनी बाबर नामा में mention किया है कि he used to get amazed with his eyes, his body and all those things. He has mentioned it about it.
Oh wow.
तो जो उसका जनरल था, उसने बाबर को खुश करने के लिए जो मंदिर था उसको तोड़वाया. वहां पे एक I'll not say masjid because masjid is a sacred place. उसने मस्जिद नहीं बनवाई थी. He created something where Babar can spend time with Babri.
Oh, and later it was...
Later because वो होता है ना, स्टोरीज बनती जाती हैं टाइम के साथ. वो उस जगह को इमारत को मस्जिद की तरह इस्तेमाल होने लगा. And it was called as Babri Masjid. So this is what Abbas told me in that podcast, and I was totally amazed to know that कि कितनी बड़ी history है जो which is not told to anybody.
There are a lot of things actually in history that come as, oh really? Did that happen? You know, it's actually quite, and with this, same thing. A lot of, you know, one's eyes open.
Eyes open.
That's what happened to me when I was researching and reading this original Valmiki Ramayana. A lot of things which I said, oh really? I didn't know this. Really?
I'll tell you, when I started this book, first day I read, say, 20 pages, and my wife was watching something. I said, yeah, I'm not going to read it. I can do podcasts without reading it because I know complete Ramayana. I just feel like I know everything. She said, okay, don't do it. She was busy enough. I said, okay, I kept it. And I also started watching something. Next day again, I was sitting, so I started reading, and that initially the Ahilya thing came.
That episode.
That actually clicked me. Ahilya should be a stone, but you have not mentioned it. That's the point I thought, you know, I should reread it because there are many things which I was thinking the way it's not like that.
Yeah,
they are totally different.
It is different.
And then the interest started developing. And then the Vishwamitra and all those things. It's amazing. मतलब मजा आ गया मुझे पढ़ के.
Good.
Such a nice book. So, ma'am, few last words to the audience.
Well, we are very lucky to be in this land, to be of this land. We have a great heritage. And all I can say is that I actually live in the United States. I've lived there for 30 years. And I did not, as long as I lived in India, I did not appreciate our wonderful heritage that we have. And it's only actually after I went to the United States in the last 12, 15 years that I have rediscovered my roots. And it makes you so proud. So we should be thankful, actually, that we are born Indian.
Definitely.
And that we have this great heritage, and we should get more into it. That's what I would say. I said read, not just my book, but on all these topics. You know, one should familiarize. One should not be unfamiliar with our heritage.
True, ma'am. Thanks a lot for being on this show and sharing such an insightful information about Ramayan. Loved this show, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks for information.
Thank you. Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.